The morning light spilled gently through the stained glass windows of St. Matthew's Church, painting the wooden pews in colors of ruby and gold. The choir was supposed to rehearse that morning, but when the organist, Mrs. Helen Crawford, unlocked the rehearsal room, she froze. There, beside the upright piano, wrapped in a faded pink blanket, lay a baby girl. The infant was sleeping quietly, her small hand curled around a corner of the cloth. A folded note sat on top of her chest. Helen's hands trembled as she picked it up. The handwriting was shaky, the ink slightly smudged. "Please forgive me. I can't keep her safe. Her name is Emily." Within minutes, the sanctuary filled with whispers and gasps. The pastor was called, then the police, then half the congregation came running, unable to believe it. The baby in the choir room. It sounded like something out of a hymn, a parable. Despite the commotion, the child remained calm, almost as if she already knew that this would be the beginning of her story. The investigation that followed led nowhere. No one had seen anyone suspicious, and no fingerprints were found. Local newspapers ran headlines like, "Baby left in church choir room, mystery of faith and abandonment." But after a few weeks, when no one came forward, the baby was placed for adoption. She was taken in by the Millers, a kind couple who had been praying for a child for years. They named her Emily Grace, keeping the name from the note. For the next 2 decades, Emily grew up surrounded by love, music, and faith. Her adoptive mother, Ruth Miller, was a choir director herself, and her father, Thomas, played the violin during Sunday services. But even amid the songs, Emily always felt a missing note, something quiet yet constant, like a melody she could never fully remember. As a child, she used to sneak into the choir room, sitting under the same piano where she had been found, wondering what kind of woman her mother had been. She would close her eyes and imagine a voice singing to her, soft, warm, and just out of reach. By the time she was 36, Emily had become a music teacher at the same church where she was discovered. She loved her students, the laughter that echoed through the halls, and the way music brought people together. But sometimes during rehearsals, she'd find herself staring at the choir benches, her heart heavy with a question that had never been answered. Who left me here? And why? She had asked her adoptive parents about it many times, but they never had answers. All they knew was that the police had kept the note and a few items from that day, none of which had led anywhere. Still, Emily never blamed anyone. Instead, she poured her longing into her music. Each melody she composed was a whisper to the past, an offering to the mystery of her beginnings. Then, one rainy afternoon, as she was cleaning the old choir storage room, she stumbled upon a dusty box labeled "Choir Recordings, 1980s. Inside were dozens of cassette tapes, their labels faded or peeling. Some were marked with rehearsal dates, others with hymn titles. But one tape had no label at all, just a faint, hand-drawn heart on its surface. Emily smiled, thinking it was probably an old love song recording. She slipped the cassette into an old player and pressed play. For the first few seconds, all she heard was static, a low hum, the sound of air moving through time. Then, a man's voice spoke softly, almost trembling. "If you're hearing this, it means she found it. Emily, my little songbird, this is for you." Emily froze. The tape whirred and the voice continued, tender, fragile, and heartbreakingly familiar, though she couldn't understand why. "I wanted to sing for you once, before they made me leave." Her hands began to shake. She hit pause. Her own name, her father's voice, after 36 years of silence. Would you listen to the tape if you were in Emily's place? Comment below. What would you do if a forgotten cassette revealed your father's voice after 36 years? Emily pressed play again, easing the cassette forward with a fingertip as if touching a relic. The man's voice filled the room, low and careful, like someone trying not to wake a sleeping child. "I don't know what you'll be told about me. Maybe nothing at all. Maybe I'll be the shadow in the doorway of your story. But I sang to you before I left. I want you to know that." Behind his words came the hiss of old tape and the distant echo of an upright piano. The same piano in the choir room now, its wood scratched by decades of hymnals and folding chairs. He hummed a melody. Emily recognized it instantly. Come Thou Fount, a hymn she had led 100 times, suddenly altered by the ache in his voice. They said it wasn't my choice to make, that I was too young, that I would ruin her life. They said the church would not survive another scandal. But I could not leave without leaving this. A breath, then a soft laugh that sounded nothing like joy. I'm terrible with goodbyes. Your mother said I talked in circles when I was nervous. Said I filled the air with music because I couldn't bear the silence. Emily sank onto the old tenor riser, the wood creaking beneath her. She pressed her palm against her sternum the way she did before difficult solos, trying to slow the drumbeat of her heart. Who are you? She whispered, as if the tape could answer. It offered a breadcrumb instead. If you look for me, start with the choir list from '89, the one Helen kept in her red folder. She never threw anything away. Helen Crawford. Of course. Helen had been the organist when Emily was found and still came to church at 81, her hearing aids squealing as she teased the altos for dragging. Emily paused the tape, snatched her tote, and hurried down the hall. Each step a hollow thud down St. Matthew's corridor. She found Helen where she always was on weekday afternoons, at the battered Baldwin organ in the sanctuary, polishing the brass stops with a cloth that had known better days. Helen, Emily said, trying to keep her voice from shaking, do you still have your old choir lists from the '80s? Helen looked up, squinted, and smiled. Child, I still have grocery receipts from the '80s. She nodded toward the sacristy. Second filing cabinet, bottom drawer. The red folder. The drawer stuck, then surrendered with a sigh of paper. Emily pulled out the red folder, brittle edges, tape-repaired corners, her own pulse loud in her ears. Inside, a roster in Helen's neat cursive, 1989, tenors, basses, altos, sopranos, names, phone numbers with area codes that no longer existed. Beside one tenor's name, a tiny hand-drawn heart, the same heart as on the cassette. J.R., Jonah Reed, tenor. Beside it, a note in pencil. Strong upper range. New this spring. Quiet. She swallowed. Helen, do you remember Jonah Reed? Helen's eyebrows lifted. A boy who sang like he meant it. Came from 2 towns over, Marion. He kept to himself. Oh, and your mother liked his harmony lines. My mother? The word slipped out before Emily could stop it. She had never called anyone by that title except Ruth. It felt like stepping into a room she wasn't sure she was allowed to enter. Helen paused, choosing her words carefully. I mean the young woman who sang here before. A beat. You know, I always hoped you'd find something kind to hold on to. Emily slid the roster into her tote. Do you have any old recordings with Jonah's voice? Helen tapped the organ bench. Cassette box in the storage room, labeled by year. I can help you look. They spent 2 hours sifting through faded plastic cases, the air full of dust and the faint perfume of lemon oil. Between Christmas cantatas and Easter vigils, they found a tape marked Rehearsal, April '89. Emily popped it into a different player. Choir chatter, a piano vamp, then a tenor climbing to a clean, bell-bright A. Jonah? It wasn't the voice on the message, not speaking anyway, but the timbre matched the hum between the words. The back of her neck prickled. On her way out, Emily detoured to her parents' house. A white clapboard with a porch swing and wind chimes that sang in minor thirds whenever the breeze came up from Maple Ridge Lake. Ruth met her at the door with a tea towel over her shoulder. You look like you've seen a ghost. I heard him, Emily said. On a cassette. He left it for me. Ruth's hand flew to her mouth. Thomas appeared behind her, eyes soft with worry. They sat around the oval table where birthdays had been sung and losses had been grieved. Emily told them everything. The voice, the hymn, the note about Helen's folder, the name Jonah Reed. Ruth reached for a box she kept at the bottom of the pantry. We never wanted to push, she said, but we kept what we were given. She unfolded the pink blanket that had cradled a stranger's child and then, from a smaller envelope, slid out a photocopy of the note that had come with Emily. Please forgive me. I can't keep her safe. There was a faint indentation on the paper, the kind left by something pressed hard beneath it years ago. a shape that looked now unmistakable, a small heart. "I think someone wanted you to find the rest when you were ready," Thomas said. That night, sleep wouldn't come. Emily sat on her bedroom floor with the cassette again, a pencil ready to rewind if the machine tried to chew what little remained of her past. She pressed play. "If you find her," the older woman with the alto laugh, "ask her about the spring picnic at Green Hollow Park." That was the day the truth started to unravel. Green Hollow Park was 5 miles out of town, a patch of grass and picnic tables where Little League teams still celebrated their wins with orange slices and store-brand soda. Emily pictured blanket squares, paper plates sagging with potato salad, a choir laughing under cottonwood trees, and 2 young people singing harmony too closely. She scribbled the name. The tape clicked. Side A ended. As she flipped it, the back of the plastic case caught the light. Along the inside spine, almost invisible, was a half-faded phone number written in blue ink, 614-555-0173, and 2 letters beside it, LC. Emily's breath hitched. LC, not Helen, someone else. Someone who had been waiting, ink trapped in plastic, for 36 years. She dialed. 1 ring, 2, 3. A woman answered, her voice low and wary. "This is Lorraine." The same alto laugh, older now, frayed at the edges, drifted through the receiver. "Lorraine," Emily said, clutching the phone. "My name is Emily Grace. I think you knew my father." There was a long silence, then a shaky inhale. "We were told never to call it that," Lorraine said quietly. "But I know the voice you heard. I knew him well. Meet me tomorrow at Green Hollow Park, noon. Bring the tape." The line went dead. Emily stared at the phone, the room around her settling into a hush that felt almost holy. At the very edge of the quiet, the cassette player whirred on its own for a half-second as if the tape wanted to speak again. But it didn't. Not yet. The next morning, the sky over Maple Ridge was a pale wash of gray, the kind that promised rain but never quite delivered. Emily barely touched her breakfast. Her thoughts raced between the name Jonah Reed, the mysterious initials LC, and the trembling voice that had said her name for the first time in 36 years. At 11:55 a.m., she arrived at Green Hollow Park, clutching the cassette in her jacket pocket like a fragile secret. The park was almost empty, except for the occasional jogger and a flock of geese by the pond. She spotted a woman sitting alone at a picnic table under a weathered oak, short silver hair, a green scarf, and eyes that carried too much memory. "Lorraine?" Emily asked softly. The woman looked up. Her expression flickered. Recognition, fear, relief. "You look just like her," she whispered. "Like who?" Lorraine gestured for her to sit. "Your mother. Her name was Clara Bennett. She sang soprano in the St. Matthew's choir. Bright, fierce, the kind of voice that filled a room even when she whispered. Jonah adored her. Everyone knew, though they tried to pretend it wasn't happening." Emily leaned forward, her pulse quickening. "What happened to them?" Lorraine sighed. "What happens in small towns when people love the wrong way?" Jonah was a few years younger, new to the choir, and Clara was the pastor's daughter. When your mother found out she was pregnant, she tried to tell her parents. They threatened to send her away, said a child born out of wedlock would shame the church. She paused, rubbing her hands together as though trying to warm them. "Jonah wanted to marry her. He even talked to your grandfather, but the man threw him out of the parsonage. After that, Clara disappeared for a while. Said she was visiting a cousin. When she came back, she didn't have you." Emily's chest tightened. "So she left me in the choir room." Lorraine nodded. "It broke her. She never forgave herself. She stopped singing after that. Moved away, remarried, but she wrote letters to Jonah that were never sent. And she stopped." Emily noticed tears in the corners of her eyes. "He joined a gospel tour for a while. Then one day he came back here, dropped off a box of tapes at the church, and vanished again. He told me once that he'd made something for you, a message, in case you ever came looking." Emily took a shaky breath. "He called me his little songbird." Lorraine smiled faintly. "That was his nickname for you." He used to say you'd sing before you spoke. Silence stretched between them, heavy but not empty. The geese honked in the distance and the wind carried the scent of wet grass. Finally, Emily asked, "Do you know where they are now? My parents?" Lorraine hesitated. "Your mother passed away 3 years ago. She had cancer. She never stopped hoping you'd find her." The words hit like a stone sinking into deep water. Emily stared at the ground, her throat closing. "And Jonah?" Lorraine's answer came softly. "No one's heard from him since 1990, but I have something you should see." She opened her handbag and pulled out a small, cracked cassette case. Inside was another tape, this one labeled in neat handwriting. "For her, side B." Emily gasped. "There's another one?" Lorraine nodded. "Jonah gave me this before he left. Told me to keep it safe. Said I'd know when to give it to you." Emily's fingers trembled as she took the cassette. "Did you ever listen to it?" "I tried once," Lorraine admitted. "But I couldn't. It didn't feel right. It wasn't mine to hear." Emily looked at her, gratitude and sorrow tangled in her chest. "Thank you," she whispered. Lorraine's eyes glistened. "Just promise me one thing. Whatever you find on that tape, remember this. They didn't abandon you because they didn't love you. They let you go because they did." That night, Emily sat in her apartment, the second tape glowing under the soft light of her desk lamp. The world outside was quiet, rain tapping gently against the windows. She loaded the tape into the player, her breath caught between hope and dread. The tape clicked, and after a few seconds Jonah's voice returned, older now, raspier, as if time itself had weathered it. "If you've come this far, you've already heard the first one. I never thought you'd find both. Maybe that means you have her heart. Stubborn. Brave." There was a pause, then a sound like pages turning. "She wanted to tell you everything herself, Emily, but the church took that chance away from her. So I'll do it. You were born right here in Maple Ridge in the rectory basement. The night you came into the world, there was thunder shaking the windows. Your mother held you and sang you a lullaby. Then, when dawn came, they took you from her. She didn't walk out of that church by choice." Emily's breath hitched. She covered her mouth as tears blurred her vision. "I tried to take you. I swear I did. But they said it would destroy the congregation. They sent me away. I recorded this so someday you'd know the truth, that you were never unwanted, only hidden." The tape crackled. A faint melody began to play. A duet. A man and a woman singing softly together. Jonah's rich tenor intertwined with a clear, angelic soprano. Emily knew the song before the first line finished. It was "Come Thou Fount." And beneath their harmony, a baby's faint cry echoed. Hers. She pressed her hand against her mouth, shaking. The sound of her parents' voices singing to her, together for the first and last time. But then, as the hymn faded, Jonah spoke one final line. "If you want to find me, follow the song. The one buried where the river bends." Emily's tears stopped. She replayed the last words over and over. Where the river bends. There was only one river that curved near Maple Ridge, the Kavanaugh River, just outside town. And in that instant, she knew. The story wasn't over yet. What could Jonah have left where the river bends? A message? A grave? Or something that changes everything again? The next morning dawned blue and sharp, the kind of autumn day that makes every color brighter, every sound clearer. Emily parked her car by the Kavanaugh River, following the dirt path that twisted through birch and willow trees. The air smelled of wet earth and pine needles. Somewhere in the distance, the church bell struck 9. She clutched the second cassette in her coat pocket. Its edges were warm from her hand. "Follow the song," Jonah had said. "The one buried where the river bends." Emily walked until the trail curved, revealing a quiet cove. The water there was shallow, smooth as glass. A single willow leaned over the bend, its roots half exposed, tangled in moss. And under the roots, something glinted. She knelt, brushing away dirt and leaves. It was a small metal box, rusted but intact, sealed with electrical tape. Her pulse quickened. She peeled the tape off and pried it open with her keys. Inside were several things. a folded piece of sheet music, a photograph, and a cassette labeled, "For Emily, Last Song." Her breath caught. The photo showed a young man and woman, Jonah and Clara, sitting on a blanket by the riverbank, smiling at the camera. Clara's hands rested on her pregnant belly. Jonah's arms circled her protectively. On the back of the photo, written in faded blue ink, "Our songbird will find this someday." Emily pressed the picture to her chest. For a moment, the years collapsed. The ache, the questions, the silence. All of it felt smaller than the love caught in that image. She unfolded the sheet music next. The title read, "Grace's Song." The melody line was simple, pure, written for piano and voice, with lyrics scrawled in Jonah's hand. "When the night forgets the dawn, when the silence sings along, know my love is still the chord that keeps your heart in tune." Her tears fell onto the paper, smudging the ink. Emily hurried home, hardly remembering the drive. Once inside, she placed the third cassette into her player. Static hissed for a moment, then Jonah's voice filled the room again. Softer now, weaker, as if recorded in the final hours of someone who knew time was short. "Emily, if you found this, it means you followed the river. It means you heard our song. I don't know what life gave you, but I hope it gave you music. That's all I ever wanted for you." He coughed, a rough, painful sound, but kept going. "They said I couldn't see you, couldn't even know your name, but I did. I knew. And I watched you grow, from a distance. I came to every Christmas concert, every Easter service. You looked so much like your mother, standing there at the piano, leading the choir. I wanted to reach out, I never did. I didn't want to break what you had." Emily froze. He'd seen her. All those years she thought she was alone, he had been sitting quietly in the back pews. "I was proud of you," Jonah continued, his voice trembling. "You turned the place of your beginning into something beautiful. You made that old choir room sing again. I couldn't ask for more." Then, after a pause, came something unexpected, the sound of another voice. Clara's. "If you're listening, Emily," she said softly, "we never stopped loving you. We sang to you once, and that song never stopped." A piano began to play behind her words. Jonah and Clara sang together, their harmony tender and raw. Emily recognized the melody. It was Grace's song. The lyrics spoke of forgiveness, of time, of how love could live beyond its own ending. When the final chord faded, Jonah spoke once more. "This is the last thing we made together. We buried it so you could find it when you were ready. Remember this, my little songbird. Your beginning was never abandonment. It was sacrifice. And sometimes love hides, not to disappear but to survive." Silence followed, a silence that seemed to hum with their presence. Emily sat for a long time without moving. The world outside her window glowed gold with the setting sun, and she thought of how music travels. Vibrations through air, through walls, through years. Somehow, it had reached her. She placed the tape back into the box, then dialed Helen Crawford. "Helen," she said, her voice steady but thick with emotion. "I found them. I found everything." Helen's gasp crackled through the line. "Oh, Emily. Then it's time to let the whole town hear their song." The following Sunday, Emily stood in the same choir room where she had once been found. The congregation gathered, curious after the letter she'd sent announcing a special service. On the piano sat the old tape recorder. Emily stepped up to the microphone. 36 years ago, I was left right here, a mystery wrapped in a blanket. I grew up loved, but I carried a question all my life. This week, I found the answer." She told the story, not of scandal or shame, but of two people who had been silenced by fear and yet left behind a song strong enough to outlive them. Then she pressed play. Jonah and Clara's voices filled the sanctuary. The church, once so cold and judgmental, became still. People bowed their heads. Some wept. The air shimmered with something unspoken. Grace, perhaps. When the final note faded, Emily sat at the piano and began to play the same song live. The congregation joined her, voices trembling but full. It was no longer just her parents' song. It was hers now too. As the last chord hung in the air, Emily whispered, "Thank you for finding me." And for the first time in her life, she felt completely home. As the congregation disperses, an elderly man lingers in the back row, his eyes wet, his hands shaking. When Emily looks closer, she feels her breath catch. Could it be him? After all these years? When the last chord faded into the rafters, Emily sat still at the piano, her fingers resting on the keys. The congregation rose slowly, many wiping their eyes, unsure whether to clap or pray. The sanctuary felt changed, lighter, as if all the hidden sorrow that had haunted its walls for decades had finally found release. She stood and thanked everyone for coming. "This song was my parents' truth," she said softly. "And now it belongs to all of us. To anyone who's ever loved, lost, or waited too long to say the words that matter." People began to file out quietly, speaking in hushed tones. Helen Crawford hugged her tightly at the door. "They'd be proud of you, Emily," she whispered. "You turned their silence into something holy." Emily smiled through tears. "It wasn't me, Helen. It was them. They never stopped singing." She gathered her things and started toward the back of the church. That was when she noticed him, a man sitting alone in the last pew. His hair was white, his shoulders thin, but there was something familiar about the way he held himself, upright yet gentle, like someone who'd spent a lifetime listening more than speaking. He didn't move as she approached. His eyes were fixed on the piano, glistening in the amber light of the stained glass windows. Emily's heart pounded. "Sir, are you all right?" The man turned. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. His face was older, lined, but the eyes, deep hazel, steady and kind, were the same ones from the photograph she'd found by the river. The same eyes that had watched her from the back pews all those years. He smiled faintly. "I wasn't sure if I should come," he said, voice trembling. "But when I heard the letter read in church, I had to." Her voice broke. "Jonah?" He nodded once, slowly. "I didn't think I deserved to see this day." Emily took a step closer, tears welling in her eyes. "You were there, weren't you? All those years." "I never stopped coming," he whispered. "Every Christmas, every Easter, I sat in that same seat. I watched you sing, and I thanked God for every note. But I couldn't speak to you. Your parents, the Millers, they gave you everything I couldn't. I didn't want to take that away." She knelt beside him, her hands shaking. "You could have told me." He smiled sadly. "I tried once. I wrote letters, dozens of them. But I could never find the courage to send them. I thought maybe you were better off not knowing who I was." Emily reached into her bag and took out the metal box from the river. "I found your tapes. And the song. You and Mom. You gave me something that not even time could take away." Jonah's lips trembled. "She wrote that melody the night before you were born. She said she wanted you to hear love before you ever heard pain." For a long moment, they just sat there. Two lives that had run parallel finally meeting in the same measure of silence. Then Jonah said, "May I hear you play it? One last time?" Emily guided him to the front of the church. He leaned on her arm, his steps unsteady but sure. She sat at the piano, and he stood beside her, his hand resting lightly on the lid. The sunlight through the stained glass painted his face in blues and golds. She began to play Grace's song. Her fingers moved gently, each note a thread binding past and present. Halfway through, Jonah's voice joined hers, thin now, but pure. He sang softly like a man giving back everything he'd kept locked inside. When the final chord faded, neither spoke. The silence said everything. Jonah placed a trembling hand over hers. "Thank you for finding me," he whispered. Emily smiled through tears. "You found me first." He laughed softly, then looked toward the cross above the altar. "Clara always said love was the only hymn that never ends." Moments later, Helen peeked through the door to say goodbye, but she stopped short. Jonah and Emily were sitting side by side at the piano, their heads bowed, hands intertwined. Helen smiled quietly and slipped away. Outside, the wind carried the faint sound of the river, bending, winding, endless, like a song that would never truly stop. Weeks later, Emily organized a memorial concert titled Songs for the Unheard. Choirs from neighboring towns came to perform. At the center of the program was Grace's song, arranged for voices, strings, and piano. Before it began, Emily told the audience, "This song was born from silence, from a love the world once tried to hide. But love doesn't vanish when it's silenced. It waits. It finds new voices." When the first note rose, Emily looked up at the rafters, where sunlight broke through in a narrow beam. She imagined her mother's laugh, her father's gentle tenor, and smiled. And somewhere, in the echo that filled the church, their harmony lived again. Love may be buried, forgotten, or silenced by time, but it will always find a way to be heard. Would you have searched for the truth like Emily did? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story if it touched your heart.